So what's happening with Studio? So again, a couple of you that are seasoned attendees to the lab developer workshops, you'll know for several months or several events this year, I talked about the fact that Studio has its push to production on the last Thursday of the month. Okay, and then where I've been going on about that all the time. Okay, the last couple of months, that's not been quite the case. Yeah, as we did on the last developer workshop, we said it got pushed into the first week of September, and also the one at the end of July slipped into the beginning of August. And this push to production is exactly the same. So again, based on our last Thursday of the month model, it should be going out tonight. It's not. It's actually going to go out on the 6th of October. So that's when these updates are actually going to be pushed to the platform. In reality, again, I'll talk about a couple of the bits that are happening. Most of this stuff is behind the scenes at the moment because we're doing a lot of infrastructural changes to the product to support some new capabilities that we're going to deliver to you in the first 6 months of next year. So, but we'd like to let you know these things are going on. So what's actually still happening? Well, the Google Cloud Platform capability is moving forward. It is now something that we have exposed internally, and actually having the Ashley on the line. If anyone wants to ask any questions, one of the first things we're going to be doing with this is actually releasing some challenge labs. So we're going to expand our challenge lab portfolio with some Google Cloud labs. And the reason we're doing that, first of all, is we want to make sure that we've got the scalability, the robustness, all those sorts of capabilities. We want to make sure all the user interface components are working, and sort of eat our own dog food before we start letting customers actually get their hands on it and using it in a 100% self-service model. Okay, so we will be hopefully having some challenge labs coming along over the next few months, but the grand plan is subject to how obviously the challenge labs go. We're looking for general release in the first half of next year. So if you wanted to develop your own Google Cloud Labs, you'll be able to do that. Okay, a couple of things about that. Hopefully, the challenge labs are awesome. Our infrastructure proves to be scalable and reliable, and Google can handle our demand. It might seem a bit strange that you think about cloud platforms, but we have had phone calls from or not so much phone calls, but we've actually had emails from Amazon and we've had emails from Microsoft going, please stop, we can't handle that workload. So sometimes it's about their scalability rather than our scalability. So we just need to make sure we've got that robustness in place. So hopefully it will be, comfortably in H1 rather than maybe if you attend launch, which will be more likely May of 2023, and we still say it's still coming. But we'll see how we go. There's a lot of ifs and buts there because it's development work, and who knows what's around the corner from a bump in the road. We've already released some additional Lab Advisor enhancements. We'll talk about those in a moment. So you might have seen those if you've been using Lab Advisor, that we actually extended the list of rules that we've got. So we actually added 8 new rules to Lab Advisor in the last few weeks. And we'll just sort of highlight the areas that the new rules are in. I'm not going to go into detail there. I'll explain why on that in a moment as well. The other thing we've been working on is actually improving the retry logic when building scored labs when scoring against virtual machines. Okay, so part of this we talked about on the last lab developer workshop, and we've done a partial release. Okay, but we've actually got some more capability coming as part of the 6th of October release. So just to recap on what the issues are and what we've done and what's coming. So we had some challenges in certain edge case scenarios when using virtual machines and scoring against them. So let me give you a really simple example of where we had a problem. Okay. If you had, for example, a lab, that lab had a virtual machine in it that maybe was powered off, and maybe didn't even have an operating system in it. And maybe the objective of the lab was the user was to power the virtual machine on, install an operating system, and basically do those sort of things. And then you're going to score against those tasks. Okay. So one of the times you could actually have a problem is someone loads the lab, so they launch the lab and then they go end score, okay, and don't actually do anything. We could actually get stuck in a whole set of scoring retry issues because we're trying to actually score a VM that's not powered on, it's got no OS. So basically it could end up as a bit of a problem, okay, and we had, shall we say, over robust retry logic, which actually could get us into a bit of a race condition. Okay, so the first thing that actually happened was we actually have now implemented some pre-flight check capability. So we're actually checking the state of the virtual machine before we actually do any scoring. Now, the great thing about that is it's mostly resolved those edge cases. The downside, like everything, it also sort of partly caused a little bit of another issue. There are a couple of scenarios where there might be a requirement that you might need to retry a scored activity just because of stabilization, stuff along those lines. So we sort of went from lots of retries to almost no retries. Okay, so that's really where the second part of the solution is going to come in, and this is really where, as a lab developer, you'll be able to determine on a per scored activity, do you want that activity to retry? And if so, how many times would you like it to retry? So there's going to be some just ability for lab developers to build more robustness into their scoring scripts. So that second part is what we're expecting to see on the 6th of October. And for those that attended the lab developer workshops where we discussed the summer of cloud, and last month we discussed virtualization using cloud fabrics for virtualization, we did mention that we had a bug where you couldn't score against Azure-based virtual machines. Okay, and we did mention the fix was coming, and we was expecting it today, but of course the push to production has got pushed till next week, so that scoring fix is still going into the platform. So anyone that's interested in that, that's coming pretty soon. Just to expand and talk about the elephant in the room that I like to refer to it, some of you would be aware that we released the new Skillable Studio dashboard, and then pretty quickly the dashboard disappeared. Okay, so why was that, and what's happening there? Okay, so on the surface you might have just seen the new dashboard as just a makeover of the new dashboard, but in reality the new dashboard was the start of a complete re-architecture of the Skillable Studio platform. And we were going to make the platform more modular. It was going to be using better APIs to communicate with components rather than internal calls. We was then going to be able to maybe expose those APIs to customers so they could do things like lab profile maintenance through APIs and so on, if that's what they wanted to do. Now, of course, this is a really big project to re-architect the whole of Skillable Studio. It's not happening this year. It's a long-term project. And the new dashboard and Lab Advisor was effectively the first step down that road. Okay, so one of the things you might have noticed if you logged in when the new dashboard was in play is if you went, say, to the admin page and then you went back to the dashboard, what actually happened was you went through a sign-in process, and that was actually because you was transitioning from one website to another effectively, because you're moving across this architecture. So it actually turned out this caused an issue for a very few number of customers that use single sign-on to our platform. And it actually meant they couldn't log into Skillable Studio. Okay, so that's why the new dashboard disappeared. Okay, so that's now been fixed, and we're expecting the new dashboard again to be reinstated on the 6th of October. What that did cause we did have some support calls and a few other bits and pieces where people went, oh, the new dashboard's gone. I can't get to advisor anymore. Okay. And what they hadn't noticed was actually the old dashboard got updated, and we did actually put an advisor link on the old dashboard so you can get to the lab advisor. And we have actually updated the lab profiles tile on the admin page. When you're on the admin page, when you look at the lab profiles tile, there's also an advisor link on there as well. So even though we took away the dashboard and explain why there, actually advisor is still there, it's still accessible, and it's still something you can still use. So carrying on with lab advisor, we said that we brought some new rules out. So these are the high level categories of the rules. So these generally break down into more than one task. So if we think back to the initial release, okay, when we first showed it to you on the lab developer workshop, we showed you there was rules like duplicate MAC addressing. So if you've got VMs with, say, MAC addresses, it alerts you to that. If you've got labs that are configured to run much longer than the users are actually taking to run the labs for, and so on. So there was lots of those sort of things. So in release 2, we then actually started to dig deeper into configurations. So thinking about scenarios where you might be using lab profile inheritance. So you've got a parent and a child lab profile. So one example would be you're inheriting the VMs, the resources, maybe from a parent profile. That parent profile also has lifecycle actions, but the child profile, A, is not inheriting lifecycle actions, and B, it doesn't have any of its own. So, why is that? So again, we're just going to flag that. Is that something you need to be aware of? So that wouldn't be critical, but it'd be something that we would want to let you know about. And that's really like the continuing theme of these types of configurations. Now, I'm not going to go into those in detail. And the reason I'm not going to go into those in detail is October's Lab Developer Workshop is actually going to be a deep dive on Lab Advisor. And we'll look at all the rules. We'll look at the configuration, which actually causes all those rules to be flagged, and as well as obviously how we remediate for those particular problems. So that'll be October's Lab Developer Workshop. I think I'm going to have to create about 500 lab profiles, so you've all got your own sets of lab profiles to go and have a look at. So I've got a busy October. Okay. A couple of other things, just so that, or actually really the key thing I want to, is the postpone actions now work correctly. When you hit postpone before, what it really did was it dismissed it. We've now actually put it in, so you'll be able to say postpone this for 7 days, 14 days, that sort of thing. So that's really quite important piece of functionality. Please, again, still want to notice, even with these updates on October, okay, beta release 2 is still a beta release. Okay, we're going to be in that phase for more than likely best part of 6 months. While we gather feedback from yourselves, tell us how to make it better. Plus, there's a couple of things which we will discuss on the Lab Developer Workshop where it doesn't work quite the way we want it to at the moment. And we'll talk about that capability and features that are coming.